Hello and welcome to the Business Standard Morning Show. I'm Binu Sandhu. Let's take a look at the stories for the day. A Christmas night bash at the labour quarters of Kitex Garments in Kerala's Kochi took a violent turn, leaving 5 policemen injured. In the subsequent crackdown, the state police arrested at least 150 workers of the world's second largest infant garment maker. This triggered sharp reaction from its owner, who alleged that it was a ploy to shut the factory down. Our next report looks into the slugfest between the state and Kerala's biggest private sector employer, which has taken political overtone.
Kitex Garments, a Kerala-based listed garment exporter with a market cap of about Rs 1,200 crore, has courted fresh troubles. It employs more than 5,500 workers and its clients include American majors like Walmart, Amazon and Target. On December 25th, two groups of clashing workers at the company's labor camp first attacked the security staff. The events took an ugly turn when the police were called in. 8 policemen were injured and their vehicle was torched. They promptly detained 164 workers, all of whom were migrant laborers. The cause of the clash between two worker groups is still a mystery. The next day, Kitex MD Sabu Jacob said that only 23 people were involved in the crime and the remaining workers were wrongly charged and detained. He said this was an attempt to carry out political vendetta against Kitex and him. The local MLA asked for Kitex management to be held responsible for escalating the violence. We must note that Kitex had launched a political party called 2020 through its CSR arm. Business Standard's Shine Jacob explains the political angle behind Kitex's frequent run-ins with the state government and its authorities.
In July this year, there was again a tug of war between the state government and the Kitex group when they tried to move out a 3,200 crore project from Kerala to other states. What apparently happened is that the company claimed that there is a sort of witch hunt that is happening against Kitex due to political reasons. Within a span of 1 month after the Kerala elections, the company faced a series of 11 raids and inspections by various departments, including labor, health, factory, boilers, pollution control, police, collector, everything. They came into global attention in 2015 when an arm of their CSR wing, called 2020, they came to power in a panchayat called Kizhakkambalam in Ernakulam district of Kerala. Certain things were evident. People were getting good facilities. People were getting cheap food items. People were getting good roads, good homes. But in 2020, what they did is that not just they retained Kizhakkambalam, they stormed into power in 3 nearby panchayats. This is when political parties started taking notice of this movement. This political party later contested for the 2021 assembly elections also. The reason why Mr. Jacob is calling it as a political vendetta is because in 3 constituencies in the assembly elections, their party 2020 came in 3rd position. So probably what the company or Mr. Jacob is saying is that this may be the reason why the company is becoming a victim of all these actions and vendetta politics because of that.
In the assembly constituency where the headquarters of Kitex is located, 2020 gave a tough contest to both Congress and the ruling CPIM by securing 28% of the votes. It is difficult to establish a clear link between the expanding voter base of 2020 and the action taken by authorities against Kitex. But the company has constantly used this argument that Kerala is not a business-friendly state to justify its stand. The Kitex example shows that when a corporate gets directly involved in politics, It cannot be kept separate from its business. It is evident that the current labor unrest at Kitex gives an opportunity for other parties to intensify their fight against 2020. Kitex and its MD Sabu Jacob have to contend with the fact that they are irreversibly intertwined with the political ecosystem, something that's not favorable for the business.
Moving on from Kerala, let us see what lies ahead on the equity front. As the markets prepare to usher in 2022, a sense of caution has crept in given the central bank policy action and a rise in Omicron cases. So, what does 2022 have in store for the markets, and what is the mood among foreign investors with regard to India? Puneet Wadhwa caught up with Samir Arora, founder and fund manager at Helios Capital, on how he sees equity markets play out in 2022 and the factors that will impact sentiment.
Hello, Samir, and welcome.
Hi. Good morning.
So let me start by asking you, liquidity was king for the markets in the past 18 to 20 months. With this drying up now, what all factors will drive the markets from here on in 2022?
So first thing, I don't think that liquidity was a very big thing for the market, simply because if you look at the FII inflows into the market, even before this fall, that means say till end of last month, the total inflows were about $6 billion only. If you look at inflows into Asian emerging market countries, which means Korea, Taiwan, India, not China, but all the others, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, I read recently that till end of November, they had outflows of $38 billion.
Okay.
Then you see inflows into our into our venture capital, private equity. That is like some $40-50 billion. But that cannot be qualified under short-term liquidity because that money will be locked up for 5 years, 7 years, whatever number of years. So I don't think that India itself and even our region was a very big beneficiary, at least of equity-linked easy flows.
Okay. So even if the flows were to the tune of $6 billion in 2021, even they tapering down or trickling down in 2022, why is it getting so much of a flutter in the
I
equity
don't
markets?
think it will in the end. That's what I'm saying. I don't think this will create in the end too much of a difference. If what happens is once you are lost in that moment, for that month, it might be a big number if somebody takes out $4 billion, suppose. But if you take out 4 billion over a year, nobody cares. So sometimes these things get exaggerated. I don't think that this per se market correction, if it is to be linked only to withdrawal of liquidity, is such a big deal. So I don't think this correction is just because of this. It could be because of Omicron. It could be because of somebody resetting his equity kind of thing, or a few, panic or short term or whatever you want to call it. But I don't think this is the sustainable answer to the question that because interest rates are high going up, this market had to fall this much or more.
And foreign funds now look at India as an alternate destination, given the developments in China. Or are they going to focus more on other emerging markets?
Now that depends, but for the last 5 years, India has getting money disproportionate to its weight in the emerging market index. That means somebody is actively preferring India. And that is very easy to see by looking not that India got more money, because see, India's weightage in the index is around 12%. Okay. And Korea's weightage in that same emerging market index is some 16%, and China is some 33-34%. So in the last 3-4 years, Korea, Taiwan also is higher than India, some 13-14%, so 10% higher than India. So Korea and Taiwan were actually having absolute outflows, and India was having inflow, which means that India was being actively preferred. So why should that change? And now with China having 33-34% weight, if somebody even backs off 5-10% of that weight, saying that if I'm putting 100, no, I want to put 95, which means instead of 33, I want to put 31 or 32, that 1 or 2%, the natural beneficiary of that is India.
So if the markets were to go up from here over the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see the leadership emerge from?
So we broadly don't change what we normally like, which is we like financials, we like tech pharma. And in the recent years, we had made it tech pharma and specialty chemical, although we don't really these days like it too much because the prices have gone up a lot, valuation that means. And we like consumer, but the consumer that we like is mostly middle class under penetration, not India under penetration, which means we like these McDonald India or Jubilant India kind of thing, which is more catering to the urban, the 300-400 million population rather than a billion population.
So growth, value, or momentum, what should investors chase in 2022?
Well, we choose growth and value as a mix, sort of. In the sense that growth should be there, but it should not be at unprecedented high valuations. It's not that high valuations so growth, either the growth should be really good, 25 plus,
Okay.
or the valuation should not be unprecedented high. It should be in range of what they were previously, and you can accept that.
So for 2022, should investors temper their market return expectations?
I would think that in theory, the returns can't be very high. So the longer term returns from the market or for the last 25 years at the NSE 500 level have been 15.8% per annum. I calculated recently. I saw recently. And therefore, in the 14-15% is the normal longer term range of returns. Now, we don't know what you'll get because in the end, you never get these kind of numbers, but the annualized number becomes 15. But the best bet would be somewhere in this range of mid-teen returns for the index.
Okay. Thanks, Samir, for joining us today. We hope to see you soon. Have a great
Thank you.
2022.
Thank you.
The year 2021 saw several companies charter good growth despite the pandemic. Ola was one of them. Co-founded in 2010 by Bhavish Agarwal, it became India's leading cab aggregator, beating Uber in the next few years. The company is rapidly expanding into other businesses and has made a potentially game-changing pivot to make electric vehicles. It has received 1 million bookings for its electric scooter within months of unveiling it. And its factory too was ready not long after the announcement. Let us take a look at how 2021 has turned out to be a year of reckoning for Ola.
"36-year-old Bhavish Agarwal is feeling like Tesla CEO Elon Musk nowadays. After all, he's running two unicorn startups, Ola and its spin-off Ola Electric. Drawing parallels to the world's richest person, Agarwal confessed to sleeping in Ola Electric's factory in Tamil Nadu as it ramps up production of its newly launched electric scooter. He has had a roller coaster of a year, to put it mildly. Most of the action took place at the Ola Electric factory, 120 kilometers away from its headquarters in Bangalore. Ola began the year on a subdued note. Its core ride-sharing business was in the doldrums, slowly recovering back to the pre-pandemic levels. The upturn would be thrown off the course again in the next few months in the second wave of pandemic. Its FY21 revenue nosedived 63% to 983 crore rupees. And around this time, Ola Electric, the EV unit spun off from Ola in 2019, commenced the construction of its two-wheeler factory. The factory was meant to roll out 2 million scooters annually in the first phase and 10 million by mid-2022. The EV foray coincided with the government's extension of the FAME 2 subsidy scheme for another 2 years. But its plans have been hobbled by supply chain issues. The company was able to get the plant up and running in just over 6 months. It promised first scooter deliveries in October but pushed it to mid-December. The delay was blamed on the global semiconductor shortage by the company. The first batch of 100 units was handed over to customers on December 16 with pomp and show. Expanding its footprint, Ola ventured into the used cars business in September. While in November, it launched a 10-minute grocery delivery service, joining the rush of quick commerce startups. Ola has plans to foray into personal finance, vehicle loans, and micro insurance. It also runs a food delivery business by leveraging its multi brand cloud kitchens. But a recent spate of exits at the leadership level perhaps gives us the sense that Ola is biting off more than it can chew. Mohit Mittal of Praxis Global Alliance decodes Ola's ambitions and tells us what it needs to do.
Ola needs to be ahead of the curve. It has to continue to maintain its leadership position. See, from the perspective of electric vehicles, I think it's a fairly positive mood foraying in this space. Unit economics for a electric vehicle on a mobility platform make better sense now, considering the high fuel prices. Second, electric vehicle is now getting that push from the government. Automotive sales is a gross margin positive business. The entry barriers in electric two-wheeler market are not very high at the moment. Investing in quality vehicle, ensuring that the factor of safety is very high. There are no issues. You live up to the promise is very, very important for them getting to the market first. Or let's say, they are not the first anymore, but ahead of the ICE counterparts, right? Bajaj, TVS, and Hero. It's very important. See, there is scope for 8 to 10 players in an automotive market, right? If not 8 to 10, at least 6 to 7 can survive. And if you want to survive, right, then you have to operate at scale. Ola the platform will continue to act as a let's say sort of an customer acquisition and retention vehicle. They need to work and ensure that the customers are satisfied. They don't move away to some other platform. They're also trying out grocery delivery. They've gone into the second-hand cars segment, used car segment, which is a fast-growing segment. Lending and let's say insurance, right? It's a slightly tough business, right? But because Ola has historically does not have a very lot of expertise or experience in that space. They've tried to work with Ola Money, but see, the good thing is all these businesses, right? They're large businesses, they're growing businesses, and they're profitable. So if you look at let's say the lending startups, they're already making money. They're not losing money. It's a margin positive, margin neutral business. They need to do it for an IPO, but you also need to understand if any new investors will come in, they will not purely invest for the mobility business, where let's say which is sort of now maturing. They will invest for the future growth, but they need to build, let's say, strong teams, seasoned team, stable team with a razor sharp focus needs to be there to scale up these businesses.
In August, the gross merchandise value of Ola's cab business crossed pre-COVID levels. The mobility business is showing maturity. It may not require heavy intervention, but ensuring quality in customer service is still the key. On this front, customer complaints have not fallen on deaf ears, and the company is finally taking steps to fix the most important issue of cab drivers cancelling rides. India has no dearth of visionary entrepreneurs who can attract hundreds of millions of dollars in funding in an instant. Agarwal is among those. Agarwal is among those that are leading the pack, attracting funds from the likes of SoftBank, Tiger Global, and Falcon Edge Capital. As the year was coming to a close, Agarwal has been able to take Ola's valuation to $7.3 billion and that of Ola Electrics to $5 billion. A no easy feat. After a year that has taught hard lessons to Bhavish Agarwal, an eventful 2022 awaits him. Ola is planning an IPO in the first half of next year and is preparing to launch a super app with all its offerings. As for Ola Electric, Agarwal says they are still at the start of their journey.
Looking back, change, it seems, was the flavor of 2021. If Ola electric scooters promised to change the way we travel on roads without any noise or a trail of pollution, Parliament passed the much talked about labour codes to reform the labour laws which have been unchanged since independence. Our next report tells us more about these 4 codes and what they promise to change.
The 4 labor codes, the codes on wages, industrial relations code, social security code, and occupational safety, health, and working conditions code, are set to replace 29 labor laws. Over 90% of India's 50 crore workers are in the unorganized sector. And through these codes, the government wants to ensure that all of them enjoy the benefits of labor laws related to minimum wages and social security. Since labor is a concurrent subject, both the center and states have to frame the rules. Although the centre notified the codes in September 2020, no state has notified the requisite rules under these codes. Just 12 states have published the draft rules so far, so once all the states are on board, the codes will be implemented. Let us now take a look at these codes separately. The Code on Wages, notified in August 2019, subsumes the provisions of 4 laws: Payment of Wages Act, the Minimum Wages Act, the Payment of Bonus Act 1965, and the Equal Remuneration Act. It applies to all establishments and to all employees in both organized and unorganized sector. This code envisages uniform applicability of the provisions of timely payment of wages and minimum wages to all employees. It introduces the concept of a floor wage, which is to be determined by the center after taking into account the minimum living standards of workers, which may be different for different geographical areas. The state government can under no circumstance fix a minimum wage rate which is lower than the floor determined by the center. The code also prohibits discrimination between wages payable to a male and a female for the same work done. The Code on Social Security subsumes 9 laws and empowers the center to notify various social security schemes like the EPF, EPS, and ESI for the benefit of workers in all sectors. It also empowers the center to frame any other schemes for self-employed, unorganized workers, gig workers, and platform workers and members of their families. Firms employing more than 20 workers have to mandatorily report vacancies online under this code. This code has provision for creation of a social security fund for workers in the unorganized sector. According to some reports, employees may be able to enjoy a 4-day work week provided the total working hours in the entire week is not less than 48 hours. The Code on Industrial Relations amalgamates 3 existing laws and expands the definition of worker to include persons employed in skilled or unskilled, manual, technical, operational, and clerical capacity. Besides, persons employed in a supervisory capacity and earning less than 18,000 rupees a month have been brought under the definition. The code introduces a new provision for fixed-term employment, giving employers flexibility to engage a worker on the basis of a written contract. Fixed-term employees will get the same benefits as permanent employees. Besides, the new Industrial Relation Code would also improve ease of doing business by allowing firms with up to 300 workers to go ahead for layoffs, retrenchments, and closure without government permission. At present, all firms with up to 100 employees are exempted from government permission for layoff, retrenchment, and closures. And finally, the Occupational Safety, Health, and Working Conditions Code amalgamates 13 existing labor laws and applies to factories having at least 20 workers if the manufacturing process is being carried out with aid of power, and 40 if the manufacturing process is being done without power. Under this code, employers are required to ensure that the workplace is free from hazards which cause injury or occupational disease to employees, provide free annual health examination or test, free of cost to certain classes of employees. A provision has been made for employers to provide traveling allowance annually to an interstate migrant worker for undertaking a to and fro journey to his native place. Further, providing appointment letters to the workers has been made mandatory. Some provisions of these codes have also invited criticism, including the one which allows firms with up to 300 workers to go ahead with retrenchment and closure without the government permission. However, experts believe that these reforms will pave the way for the welfare of workers in both organized and unorganized sectors. They will go a long way in addressing workers' concerns and that of the companies too.
It is high time that the labor laws are reformed. This will benefit both the employees and the employers. With that, we've come to the end of this show. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news and analysis. Stay tuned and thank you for watching.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views, and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, and LinkedIn.